Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, where we build worlds and break them for fun. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted. Today's themes, that's the big ones. We're talking about catastrophes that shake the foundation of our worlds, natural disasters, and world-ending events.
Maybe it's a magic storm that eats memories, a carnival that warps your soul, or even sports events secretly summoning eldritch horrors. Whatever it is, there's events change. Whatever it is, these events change everything, and we're diving into how to use them in your games.
But before we do, you can find the links in the description to all things Aether Skies, Under the Dome, and Zoo Mafia.
As always, folks, we're going to be breaking this live stream into 3 segments where we talk about our 3 campaign settings. But don't worry, we feel like our ideas are kind of generic, and hopefully they inspire you guys to add them into your games, or your give you inspiration for your own world-altering events. Aether Skies, the rise of beastkin prophets and cursed Aether ships. Disasters aren't just natural anymore; they're engineered. Under the dome.
Under the Dome. Oh, sorry.
Under the dome, a sentient carnival spreads chaos like a plague. What happens when the dome can't hold it back? In Zoo Mafia, when storms shut down power and the zookeeper's gaze sharpens, even animals weather the fallout.
What's the wildest world-ending disaster you've thrown at your players or survived as a character? Let us know in the comments or in the chat.
As always, folks, we will be taking questions at the end. We'll do a Q&A, whether it's on anything that we talk about tonight or whatever you have on your mind. So just put them in the chat for a question next to it to make it easier to find. If it seems like we're ignoring you, we're not. We're just saving the best part for the end, and that is when we talk to you guys. So let's jump into Aether Skies. Aether Skies is an arcana-punk world of soaring cities, ether-fueled airships, and forbidden magic barely held in check. The skies are alight with ambition and dread. What lifts the world above may soon drag it into the ruin. Links to our first Aether Skies D&D campaign will be in the descriptions, as well as the first game we ran through Open Legend, so you can go check that out. Tomorrow night we'll be launching that live play. Can't talk tonight, guys. Sorry. Tonight we'll be launching that live play, and you can come check it out. And if you're seeing this in the future, then you can go back and watch it. Links are in the description.
So how does this week's topic applies? Aether parasites drain power from airships and cities, destabilizing society. Aetherball, once a unifying spectacle, now carries hidden signals. Aetherball, once a unifying spectacle, now carries hidden sigils tied to ancient summoning rites. Madness spreads like contagion, and entire cities may fall.
Aetherball matches may double as unintentional ritual disasters. So, when I was thinking about this talking point, I had a lot of fun coming up with, how can you turn Aetherball into a world-altering event, right? So, substitute whatever sports is in your game and how it may play out. But in Aether Skies, Aetherball is, it is like a cross between ice hockey meets lacrosse meets, Quidditch, right? Is kind of the idea, and it's played in these large arenas that are filled with Aether, and it has areas where the Aether is lighter, where it's heavier, and the ball itself is very Aether reactive. So it's very magical in nature, this sport and this game. And that got me to thinking, Ted, right? Aetherball takes place in all of the 13 cities.
Yep.
Now, the 13 cities were risen from the surface world because terrible things happened there. But not only that, they were risen into the sky and became a part of a arcane lock, an arcane seal, locking away eldritch horrors to this other place. And, there's been brief interactions and instances where that other place has come into the world of Zontera. One of the ways was when the the city of Haven was knocked out of the sky, then it returns, and apparently it was kind of cursed from that place from the other side, and it was kind of leaking um from these beyond this chaos realm, this eldritch horror place of eldritch horrors into Zonterra. Now it's been since purged and cleansed, but that doesn't mean there aren't other ways for things to seep through, and they aren't currently doing so. And looking for other ways to, infiltrate this world. So that got me to thinking, right? If every one of these cities has these arenas that are magically charged, and the players are zipping around and doing, playing the game. What if the way that these Eldritch cars try to infiltrate it is by replacing or taking over the coaches, and the coaches begin drawing up plays, and they're working together with each other, unbeknownst to the players and everybody else, to coordinate these actual like rituals of movement and magic in order to open up and weaken these barriers in the cities themselves.
That was my thoughts exactly of like, all right, just subtly tweaking the minds. Like I wasn't thinking about like full on possession, but like, unbeknownst to the coaches, like they get these ideas for plays that seem ridiculous, but have the capacity to do exactly that. And maybe they're not these, grand plans to summon Cthulhu himself, but every time something small gets through, the barriers get a little bit weaker, and now bigger things can come and bigger things can come. And then eventually, sure, some, elder god is going to, poke its way through into Zontera. That was, the way, my brain was going exactly.
Yeah, so it could be fun, and it could be as small, like you said, just letting through little things, little more influence than was there before, haunting the dreams of the citizens of the 13 cities, maybe inspiring some of them to do things they wouldn't normally do, probably for ill, or it could be as grand as like each completion of a game is a completion of a ritual out of a series of rituals until you finally get to the playoffs, right? Which again is an even bigger ritual until you finally get to the final match of the playoffs, and that is the one that actually opens the gates wide. And again, also these subtle manipulations, there may be like, in a way, rigging the matches in order to have this final ritual happen in the right city. And I think in this case, I think it would probably be Haven, because Haven's already been exposed to the most of these forces.
Right.
But it would lead to things for your players to investigate, right? In our previous game, the players were very vested in Etherball. They had favorite teams, and they always wanted to know what was going on and who was playing. Matter of fact, I believe, I think in a lot of our sessions, we kind of opened up with like, if there was a match going on or not.
It's been a while since that game happened, so I cannot say for sure.
But it's definitely so. But it's definitely a thing that the players can get invested in, and and what if the games aren't going the way they're used to them going, and things just seem to be amiss, right? And like that could actually be one of the clues, is that the players, something seems off with the games. The teams that are winning shouldn't be the teams that are winning. Everything seems out of whack. Would it be enough for the players to investigate? Maybe, maybe not. But after each game and each one of these little rituals gets completed, like you said, like there could be side effects. Even if you're working up towards the bigger reveal of, boom, Cthulhu comes through, or whatever the eldritch horror is, right? But prior to that, like there's going to be these clues, and with each match, you could kind of have something happen, like people start experiencing strange dreams, sleepwalking, possessions, inanimate objects seem to come to life. And if the players begin like investigating some of these things, maybe they're not even paying attention to the games and the matches, but they just by happenstance or they're hired to investigate these weird things, and they start to piece together, well, oh, they start to happen after each one of the matches, and the strange occurrences seems to be following with whatever the play schedule is for the season.
So I think Etherball, has so many things that can be done with it. So it's not really thought of as being linked to all of these possibly epic downfalls, but being's the fact that it is the center point, the crux of city to city communication, and it having the ability to do political espionage, and to do you know treaties and trades and all these other things. It could literally be like, oh well, just because we know we're going to have this thing going on, we know where all of the officials are going to be put. So what if the Etherball games, beyond the bringing in the Dark Lords and that kind of stuff, like what if they're used for political assassinations, and everybody wants to see the games, but would the games keep going if you know figureheads are being assassinated because everyone knows where they're going to be? Can you set up enough protection? Can you, would you opt to not go? There's all different kinds of ways to like spin what happens next.
Sure, I mean that's a great idea. You could use it as a as a way of kicking off political violence of some nature or another, whether it's a political assassination, whether it's a terrorist attack of some sort. I mean, let's face it, an arena full of people, if that would be an ideal target, for forces that wanted to work ill will towards a particular city or ideology, or even could be framing them. And the thing is, like you said, maybe it happens the first time and like people are upset, but it kind of gets dismissed as a terrible thing that happened. But then
With a fluke.
yeah, as a fluke, like they got through security, whatever. But and then it happens again at the next game, like you said. What happens then? Is it mass panic? Do they stop holding the games? Is it going to be martial law during the games? How does that affect the world, right? And this could be a world altering event on a smaller scale because it affects the cities. For intents and purposes, that's basically the world for the players in this particular campaign setting.
Like, what if you brought in the ritual from Honor Among Thieves? Like, you've got a stadium full of people, and what if you did this, the cloud of red death or whatever it was called, that Safina uses. You've got a whole bunch of people, and that could put a whole new rise to power for some necro lord or lich, or whatever new thing you wanted to create. It could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways you can use events like that in your game in order to make things more exciting, more interesting, and also like kick things off in a game that I feel like doesn't happen that often. One, like, I don't know how often other people use sporting events in their games to begin with. We've had it come up, quite a few times, but even still, it's not like a ton. So it definitely does make for something different. And like you said, the D&D movie example is an amazing one.
So moving on, Theopolis is one political strike away from mass anti-Ether riots. How do you handle it?
All right, so the city of Theopolis is a theocracy, and it is ruled by a church that is very much against how the world has gone, right? They begrudgingly accept the use of Aether and Ethermancers and Etherficers, but they absolutely despise it, and they want to reclaim the surface. So, of course, there's going to be zealots among them who are going to be rabble rousers that are going to try and move things in that direction. And if the government of that city takes that official stance, maybe motivated by these rioters, or maybe, they use the rioters to take power of the city, where before it's, just the position of the church. They weren't really doing anything about it. It's a necessary evil. They don't know how to abolish magic, the use of magic, and reclaim the surface world. But, one zealot comes to power, and all of a sudden, like they're ready to run a full scale campaign upon the surface world and try and reclaim it. But that being said, there's a reason why everyone left the surface world, and when people go down there, there's a good chance that they don't come back. It's extremely dangerous, and very little of it has been mapped out. And it's only in more recent years that they've been making more frequent forays into it and gaining more information. And can one city, Theopolis, possibly recruit some of the other cities and get them on their side and convince them as well? Could this be the thing that actually ends the civilization they do have, because they're not ready to retake the surface world? Or is it the thing that pushes them to kind of further evolve and move beyond what the cities of Other Skies is right now?
Yeah, I look at this, and we have a world where gods are questionable, but yet you have this religious zealots that just want to be like, nope, we don't like this at all. And it's an avenue of you could play an entire game of like, all right, everybody is from Theopolis. How do you pronounce it?
Theopolis.
uh you know they're from this city that hates Aether, and you just springboard off into the, all right, we're going to try to figure out how to stop people from using it, because we need to be pure, and that's why all these problems happen, because people keep using all this magic's not right. And it could be a lot of fun to really hone down on the non-magic classes, and play it, whether you're playing it with our D66 system, or whether you're playing it with D&D. Like, you can have a lot of fun and be like, nope, no magic, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, in one of our home games, Ted is actually getting ready to run Other Skies, and he just threw out a handful of pitches for us, and one of them was going to the surface and doing some other stuff. But my character's a knight of this church, and all I heard was go to the surface. And like, yep, that's what we want to do: go to the surface, purge it, and reclaim it for my church.
That's funny. uh
So, sky whales drawn by parasite blooms threaten entire fleets in their wake. So, in Other Skies, one of the biggest sources of, or not sources, I should say resources, is sky whales. They provide their blubber, they provide oil, they provide meat, plus the ivory from their bones, and it's a valuable resource that the cities do not have to travel to the surface for. But again, they're huge. These things are, some of them are as big as the ships that hunt them, so they can be quite dangerous. The saving grace is, for the most part, they're fairly docile, and most of the threat that comes from them happens to be from incidental interactions with them, right? Or once you try to bring one down for whaling, and maybe it fights back. But that being said, what happens if they start acting funny, right? The parasites that they eat are basically like these. They look like lampreys that kind of fly through the air, just soaking up ether. and they flock in these swarms, and the whales just follow them around, scooping them up like krill.
So I look at these whales that, have the ability to, kind of come in and swoop down on these, food. They have the ability to be, fought and killed and, be used as meat. But they also have the capacity to just they're in the way. So like you can have, skill challenges around them to try and, navigate your ship and what have you. But sometimes they can be aggressive, and they are big enough and strong enough to like destroy entire ships and entire fleets. And when your civilization is dependent upon from traveling from city to city, or from place to place to get resources, if you can't sail, you can't live, you can't sustain your city yourself. So these things are that much of a threat, and not because they're generally aggressive, but just because they are there.
Well, I was thinking too, like, what if the whales themselves aren't actually the problem? They're the symptom. And by that I mean, these parasite blooms, right? There's the swarms. They're acting out of character. They're being attracted to shipping lanes and the cities at greater numbers than is normal for them, or this time of year or whatever. Maybe it's a once in a century thing where they spawn, and it's a little known fact that this thing that they only do this that infrequent, right? And that produces all of them that's going to live for the next 100 years or so. And if the cities haven't experienced this or seen this before, then all of a sudden, the whales are attracted to the parasite swarms doing their bloom thing, and now the cities and the shipping lanes are clogged with whales like they've never seen before. While the whale is the problem, the cause of the problem is actually the parasite. So you have to figure out how to solve that problem in order to make the whales go away. Also, because it would probably be easier to do that as well. And the other problem with directly trying to deal with the whales is, say they can just get rid of them all, and take them out to secure the safety of the city. Well, there goes a bunch of resources that are going to go to waste, and you're not going to want to push that over a limit where they can't come back, and the city is not going to have that anymore, which could actually spell the end of the city. It's a very delicate ecosystem with the cities and the natural order above the surface. Everything is kind of integral to everything else.
So if your crew discovered a parasite nest under the struts as the storm comes upon your ether ship, would you torch it and risk them swarming as the storm hits, or fly through knowing they're feeding on your power?
All right, let's leave the world of Ether Skies and head over to Under the Dome. And a quick reminder, we will be taking questions at the end. So if you have them, you can just drop them in the chat and we'll grab them at the very end. It can be about whatever we're talking about or whatever is on your mind. With that, let's jump into Under the Dome. In the broken world of Ulthgania, chaos storms ravage the land and mutate all they touch, while pockets of civilization cling to life inside arcane, alchemical, and bioengineered domes. Within these barriers, society survives through a volatile mix of gladiatorial spectacle, mutation, brine-fueled industry, and precarious politics. Each dome a crumbling ecosystem barely holding back the entropy outside. Safety's a lie. Survival is performance, and the line between progress and madness grows thinner by the day. As always, folks, links are in the description. Nerdarchy Ted is writing weekly articles over there about Under the Dome, so find all those links down below.
So the carnival of chaos has spread beyond its known bounds, warping minds and bending reality itself. As the dome infrastructure falters and arcane balance slips, ancient titans, dormant since the world has been shattered, begin to stir beneath the surface. With chaos storms hammering from without and sleeping giants waking below, the domes may not hold much longer.
The carnival is an invasive mental disaster, dreams becoming real. All right, Ted, you've got a little bit of experience with dealing with the Carnival of Chaos. It's come up in several of our games, and it is kind of a demi-plane that has been linked to the to Ulthgania, our Under the Dome campaign setting, a post-apocalyptic world where chaos storms have ravaged nearly everything, and pockets of civilization are just trying to get by. But what happens when you introduce chaos inside the dome, even if it is in a fun carnival form?
So as we dive more and more into this content of the Carnival of Chaos, I've become like attributing it to, you know, we've got the Shadowfell and you've got the Feywild that are these, you know, places that connect to the prime material. But the Carnival of Chaos is the same, but it can be kind of attached wherever it feels like being connected. Maybe there's more to it. Maybe there's a mindset and there has to be like someone on the plane that has spiraled into insanity or madness, and that is how there's a connection. Maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe it's entirely random. But the fact that the domes themselves don't offer protection from this particular emergence makes it a lot more fun. And I love, you know, dimensional play when it comes to running or playing D&D, when you can be like, okay, well, one moment we're here, now we're over here. It's like this is amazing because you can offer a whole nother vision, give them something vastly different than whatever they're experiencing, expecting. um and the Carnival Chaos absolutely does that. And since it's a domain of chaos, you have literally the ability to, well, do you want to run it like a fun, circus or carnival where there's different events to interact with, and prizes and games like what you ran the first time, which I believe you did a blog post on that, right? Do you remember?
I think I did.
So I think that should be up on the website. I'll have to look for that specifically. But we had a lot of fun with that particular session. It was definitely, damaging and challenging and what have you. But the players were successful. Not only did we survive, but we also got some, pretty nice rewards out of it, which to me, as much as I love, the RP stuff, I also love getting the reward, the thing. Um, but when we interacted with them again, we got pulled into another race. So as opposed to riding our motorcycles, we were riding our demon grinder, which was a whole nother layer of play. And I've begun thinking and exploring of ways that I could do this. And I wonder, like, how big is the Carnival of Chaos? Like, are we talking like a Ravenloft aspect, and there are like different domains and different like carnival lords? Like, I know you had you know, what was it? Penny Whistle Pie Plow, as one of the things that we had to fight, and he had a ridiculous aspect. You had to kill him in a funny way, or he would not stay dead. But I don't know whether what my character did to bring him down was sufficient or not. But it was crazy, but it just gets me thinking, like, well, what more can I do with this? How much more can I expand on it? I did an article that was inspired by the McFarlane's Joker Dragon that fits perfectly on a mini board, and I'm like, this would fit so well in with our Carnival of Chaos, because the mini is absolutely sized fit for the table and looks freaking amazing. Um, but that could just be like one more of these lords. Like, I don't know how many would be appropriate. Could be as many as you want or as you need. If you were to play this in your realm, you could do whatever you wanted with the Carnival of Chaos because it's chaos, man.
Yeah, so it all started with a single monster from Kobold Press called the Grim Jester. One of the patrons that does coaching with me, he had brought it up, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually a great monster." I introduced it. I created the Carnival of Chaos around it, and the great thing about them is they don't stay dead unless you kill them in a way that a god of death finds humorous. Um, and from it's been kind of growing, right? Like the first time was them going through the carnival, and they finally had to make their way through a mirror fun house, and then encountered Penny Whistle at the end and defeat him, but he didn't stay dead. And next, Penny Whistle was kind of uh was kind of brought in upon a trio of evil in my world that the players have been dealing with, to try and deal with their characters and get rid of them. And of course, he's not just going to do something normal. He basically challenges them to a race with all the. It was basically like, wacky racers from Hanna-Barbera meets Rainbow Road from Mario Kart, right?
Yep.
And as we're talking, like the question is Penny Whistle one particular being, or is it many beings? Are they all Penny Whistle? Right, like you said, or are there individual domains within this realm of chaos, or is it just one? And I love the idea too. Like, what would they try and do? Like the idea that they can actually pervade into the domes themselves and cause harm without actually harming the domes, right? It would be fun for them to kind of infiltrate and begin affecting everyone's dreams. So as they're sleeping, they're dreaming, their dreams become real. What are people dreaming about? What does that mean running around the city now? It could be anything from Looney Tunes-ish to horror, right? Or you like walk in on someone's sex dream. It could be anything crazy could happen. And how is that going to affect the city? And, if those dreams become real, are they still real after the dreamer awakens? Or are they only there while the dreamer sleeps? Or maybe the dreamer can't awaken as long as the dreams are real.
Yeah, I'm so drawn in so many different ways with this carnival. It's crazy. But moving on, Awakening Titan sends tremors through Ulfgania. Runes flicker, grind tech warps, and ancient powers begin to stir beneath the dome.
All right. So Titans is something that we recently introduced into the world. And also we can go back to one of our previous discussions where we talked about gods and faiths, religion, spirituality. And we even explored the idea that perhaps each one of the domes is a sacrificed god that powers it, right? Um, what if the Titan that awakens or is awakening underneath of a dome is that god like that god in a mortal form with its divinity stripped away, because the divinity is kind of like powering the domes and keeping them going? It would still be a freaking powerful creature, right? Even if it wasn't divine, right? If it's it the amount of like sheer knowledge and power that would probably still have, even without the immortality of being a deity, could still be Empyrean level, could still be Tarask level. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is they're beginning to stir and awakening under the domes. You need the domes in order for civilization to continue and survive. So I would think it'd be more of a thing of like not actually confronting the thing, but figuring out how to stop it from awakening.
Right. So, a little bit of a teaser, with one of the domes that, I don't know when I'm gonna ever bring players there or somebody else is gonna bring there. But I've got because we're talking Titans, I've got Titanholm, which is one of the domes, and this one is ruled by giants. So if you're a medium-sized creature, you are not gonna be in a position of power here. But Valor Two-Soul, he is basically a Etten of Fire Giant and Storm Giant. Absolutely, badass of a character, but he's basically an immortal or near immortal creature. Um, and as I kind of begin exploring this realm of Titans and what have you, uh, I'm thinking like, well, what if the Titan that was underneath this dome, what if he found a way to use like giant magic and absorb that essence to not only uh you know stop the Titan from ever disrupting his dome, but to infuse himself with power. And like there's no living soul in Titanholm that doesn't know him as like the clear ruler. So like there could be like this long history of, you know, supposition or speculation or what have you. Maybe he was, the first of the new line of giants. Maybe it was a fire giant and a storm giant that were going after this at one point in time, and the power of the Titan was so massive that one soul couldn't contain it, and it fused them together, making a whole new creature. So there's a whole lot of different directions that you could kind of take, who this creature is and where it could have come from. Um, but that's the things that I love. I love coming up with these, possibilities because they can be cool rumors that you seed throughout your campaign, as you kind of get in and explore, this city that is, you know, towered over and ruled by giants.
Well, you could have fun too with like I'm kind of like thinking back to Prestige class from third edition that was in a Dragon magazine, I believe, called Waker of the Beast,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
they were just like basically you as you progress through this Prestige class, you're like becoming a Tarask basically, but also the thing that you wanted to do was find the Tarask and wake it up. Well,
Yep.
what if there was a cult based around that? Like they want to see the power stripped from this two-souled giant and sent back to where it belongs
Oh,
and awaken the true ruler of Titanholm and the world and as far as they're concerned, right? So there's definitely a lot of ways you could do things like that, and you could even run an adventure inside of this imprisoned Titan.
mm.
Like it's like they're like you're racing to the core or chasing them as they're racing to the core of this Titan. Maybe they have the thing that's going to free it so that it can reclaim its rightful place in the world. So there's definitely some fun to be had with it. Perhaps that'll be in one of your pitches for us when we begin that game.
Maybe we'll have to wait and see. That's a little bit of wait and see.
But that's not the only problem that can happen in Under the Dome. Dome instability. Cracks in the dome's protective shell are appearing. So there's a lot of reasons why that could happen. And ultimately, it doesn't matter why it's happening as much as the fact that it is happening, which is really bad because these are the things that are holding civilization together in the world of Under the Dome on Oathgania, right? So I think this would be like a great premise for a beginning of a campaign where the players or characters are hired to investigate, like, hey, what's going on? Is this sabotage? Is this a magical malfunction? Is there a power source that maybe the citizens aren't aware of that's been powering the dome? and it's beginning to fail and it needs to be replenished, like this could lead into a whole investigation as you try and figure out what exactly is going on, what the source of the problem is, so you can come up with a solution so that the dome doesn't come down, leaving leaving the whole city unprotected from the chaos storms without.
The the domes offer, not only the physical protection from the things outside, which that alone are absolutely horrible. We are talking about, Mad Max post-apocalyptic wasteland with monstrous humanoids, people eating worms, and all the other typical D&D monsters that you want to throw at your players. But the more powerful thing is the chaos storms that have the ability to literally reshape reality in a lot of different ways. I think I've got like 7 or 8 different types of storms that I've created for this campaign setting to not only be able to reshape reality, to transport things from one place to another, but utterly insane.
Well, a
And
little
the
bit of
dome, God,
I was gonna say a little bit of a teaser. After I run 12 sessions with other guys for 5e D&D on the channel, Ted's going to run Ulthgania under the dome using his domes. May I request a different one storm per session, please, sir? So you'll need
I
so
don't.
you need 12 you need 12 storms. You need another 5.
Well, I've got 11.
Okay.
Because some of them have different severities. I'll have to look. I've got to, oh, now you're gonna make me pull this up while I'm talking.
You don't have to go into it now. It's enough to know that you have them.
um, but it's a scenario that uh they have the ability to literally do everything that they want. All right, so you've got the common chaos storm, the maelstrom of unpredictability. The teleportation maelstrom, this is a rift storm. Level 3 or number 3 is the mind storm, storm of identity and thought. This has the ability to switch minds around or just replace what you're thinking. You've got the flesh storm, which has the ability to reshape your body.
That
Um,
one just sounds gross.
Veil, the Veil Storm, the storm of unreality and dimensional shifting. So this one has the ability to move larger things from one place to the other. The Hollow Storm, the storm of hunger and entropy. The Eidolon's Tempest, the storm of creation and intelligence. It's literally a living storm. Uh, there is the Unknown Storm, the myth of the Sixth Tempest. Some say it never truly existed. Some believe it's still out there. Others fear its victims simply cease to be, not just in body, but in history itself, literally removing you from the fabric of time. Uh, and like I said, so there's 7 basics, and then the regular chaos storm comes in 3 different varieties, and then each of the 7 have variable options of at least lesser and greater. And some of it is designed for um narrative aspects, and yet some of it is okay, you guys are giving clues to stay away from this. Oh, you went into it? Okay, well, let's see what happens. So my chaos storm information and random roll charts is 57 pages. uh I I
You're insane, my friend. You have too much time on your hands.
I when you said, "Hey, I want to do
Hmm.
something with Under the Dome," it was like a switch went off, and I went crazy. Um,
I've been
and
running
I
this game for like 2 years. I have one chart. Got one storm,
I
one chart. It's just chaos magic.
like I said, Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's 16 random roll charts for chaos storms.
Your
Um,
charts have charts.
but at least it's organized. But I digress. So without the domes, the populace would be subjected to any of these storms that occur. The city that I created, Valeria, that we're going to be running out of in four-ish months from now. Um, that one has storms all the time. So like they found a way to not only be protected from it, but get powered by it. Um, but maybe they're more susceptible to dome failure because they're constantly under assault. Maybe not. It depends upon how things go. Um, but the aspect of domes failing, it's happened, in this campaign setting. Even though we've only run out of one dome, I've already written there's a whole nother city, Vergusian, that the dome did fail. Chaos storms rent what was in asunder and vastly changed. And some of the things that are left used to be mortal, they're not now. um so exploring Vergusian is something that is going to be a campaign option at some point in time that I throw out there of like, hey, you want to go explore this crazy insane place, have fun. um but the ability to be protected from these storms is that main aspect of what the domes do. So like without it, you're not going to survive.
Yeah, so it becomes a big deal figuring out if they start failing, how to fix that, what can you do about it, and that could be the whole campaign in and of itself, right? And like you could throw out red herrings to, as to what's causing it, who's causing it, who stands to gain, who stands to lose, yeah, and like I said, I feel like it could just be a whole campaign right there.
Absolutely. So the dome begins to crack and the carnival whispers in your mind. Do you flee, fight, or strike a deal with the madness?
All right, folks, 2 or 3 segments done. We're gonna move on to Zoo Mafia. After I wet my whistle, I'm feeling a little dry today. I don't know if it's allergies or what. The pollen is crazy around here, guys. I don't know where you guys are at, but we're in South Jersey, and like, there's just tree jizz on everything. I don't appreciate it either. I did not consent to this. And again, keep throwing the questions in there. We'll get to them at the end. All right, Zoo Mafia. Big City Zoo looks tame by day, but once the humans turn their backs, the animals run a criminal empire behind enclosures and beneath the zookeeper's nose. Speakeasies, gun running, and turf wars rage between 3 crime families. In this jungle of fur and felonies, loyalty is currency, violence is business, and staying off the humans' radar is the only way to survive. You can jump down in the description. You can find links to the upcoming Kickstarter. Yes, we are going to do that again at some point, and we're going to make it happen. Also, the free quick start rules, go grab them. And Ted has been nice enough to throw together a link tree of all the articles and everything else we've been doing, from live gameplays to the Kickstarter link to the quick start rules, everything. Zoo Mafia, it is in there. Go check it out.
A freak blackout leaves the zoo unguarded. Security systems are down. Humans start noticing odd behaviors, and the capos are scrambling. One wrong move could expose the entire mob.
Peanut rum shortage plus back blackout equals civil war among animal families. So, Zoo Mafia is a game that is all about being a zoo animal by day and trying to get made into the mob at night. And, the quick start rules has an adventure in it called the Peanut Rum Run, which you can go check out. But in the meantime, if there's a peanut rum shortage, my friend, how are you going to do the rum run? That's a mouthful.
So yeah, how do you do a rum run without rum? So like that could be the big thing of like, all right, your bootleggers aren't bootlegging. Maybe they're being rounded up. Maybe they're like, all right, well, if I just cut off your source, then you don't have this anymore, and you can't deal it. So it's not about, who can, fight who and who can do this. It's about who can control the liquor. That could be a very interesting aspect of the game. And like one barrel of rum could be, worth its weight in gold or peanuts in this case. Um,
Well, since
you
the
know,
game takes part during Prohibition, booze is a big part of it. And in all of our games, to some extent or another, it has shown up and kind of been featured, whether it was the adventure that kicked off the campaign, whether it was, having to go find other critters to supply booze, or even, if the if the moonshine was intermingled with blood and magic. So there's many ways it's been used in our games, right? And it features prominently, and it is a thing that the families fight over. They want to control the supply. They want to keep the other animals in the zoo happy, and also they want to keep the peanuts flowing in their direction. But but here we're talking about kind of like combining a rum shortage with a blackout, in maybe in the zoo, maybe the whole city. How would that affect the animals? Because normal animals, it's not really going to, well, I wouldn't say it doesn't affect them that much, but my dog does act kind of weird when the power goes out. She's spoiled. But in a zoo, you would expect for the animals to not really care that much, right? As long as they have food and water and shelter, what's it matter to them if there's power or not? But we're not talking about any old zoo. This is a zoo in a big city, anywhere USA, where the animals act like people at night. So they do use the power. They do use people things, right? So it's going to affect them similar to how it would affect us, right? How does your family members act all of a sudden when the power goes out? You know, does your spouse get jumpy? The kids get jumpy? Well, imagine that. But everyone's somewhat wild animal, and possibly armed with Molotov cocktails and Tommy guns.
so all right, let's draw this back. The power goes out. Maybe it's you know maybe it's something greater. Maybe it's related to world events in our fictional 1920s, big city zoo USA. And you know when you've got maybe not global panic, but when you've got citywide panic, one of the things they tell you to do is hunker down. So what do the animals do when all of a sudden the humans don't leave at night? What if you've got a week long, stay where the humans don't leave the zoo, and next thing you know, tents are going up, outside the main buildings, and where animals are used to walking around and mingling with each other. Even if you were to like, hey, leave your clothes and guns at home,
Mhm.
the zookeepers are going to freak out if all of a sudden, the bear and the panda are walking around, you know, let alone if they decide to put on clothes. Um,
Things are getting weird.
so like, it would be absolutely, a different style of game of how do you play Zoo Mafia and avoiding the humans when the humans are ever present. Like, you'd have to be doing all kinds of crazy distractions and stealth and what have you just to kind of operate as normal. Like, is this like, do we wait this out, or do we try and find a new way to to move? Like, do we contract the tunnelers to make burrows to go underground and see if maybe the humans just won't realize that we've left our pens from underneath.
But you kind of got me thinking about things when you said, like, what's going on, what's happened to cause the situation, right? Is it a natural disaster like storms? You could probably use the cover of the storms, but again, it's kind of like to what you're talking about. Um, do you use this and try and take advantage of your rivals during this time of chaos and uncertainty? Or what if you're running Zoo Mafia and say it's like an alternate Earth and your world wars happening at different times, right? And it kind of lines up. And is it because the city where your zoo's in has been bombed,
Yep.
and and there's a war going on, out in the greater world, and it hasn't touched the city up until this point, but now it has. Do other animals enter the zoo that are involved in the war? Um, Having chosen sides with particular humans, not fighting alongside them, in the sense that they're doing zoo mafia stuff, but in the sense that, like, horses were used, dogs were used, different critters were used for different things, so that they may have actually seen some action and been in combat, and it could add a different perspective to your zoo animals. And if they do show up, do the crime families try and recruit them, try and take advantage of them, just try to get rid of them? How does that work? So it could just add a different dynamic to the game. Also, news from the wider world coming to the zoo of these earth-shattering events that are happening.
No,
Or
I think you said it right. The wilder world.
that definitely does work. Or if there's an army camp nearby, does then one or more of the crime families get the idea of, ooh, these are resources that we don't have but we could, right? And now your mob is trying to infiltrate an army base in order to steal, whether it's their supplies, their food, their weapons. It could go in a completely different direction and add an element to the game that we have not really explored up until now.
Yeah, it can be taken in a lot of different directions. Um, and like we could probably do like a full hour on how to do this with the rum shortage, with a blackout, with war. Like it's crazy. Um, but so rather than dive into that, let's segue into what if Outback Alice releases incriminating photos during a zoo-wide storm.
So I guess the question is, what are in those incriminating photos and who? What's going on? What's happening? Is it political figures in the zoo, like perhaps the mayor or the chief of police? Or is it, the heads of the crime families? Um, is it your particular mob? Probably not as big a deal because it's not quite as uh, world shaking as it would be if it was one of the dons to the three main families, or an official that is widely regarded and respected. Um, and how has Outback Alice released them? Are they in the paper? Does your mob now get hired by the people that are in these photos to try and do some cleanup? Like, maybe they're released, but they haven't been released to the public yet, right? Like there's stacks of newspapers just waiting to go out, and you need to go get them before they do. And you're either being paid a lot of money to do it, or peanuts in this case, to do it, or or perhaps you're trying to earn the favor of one of the dons, or having the chief of police on the take wouldn't be such a bad thing either.
So, what if you know somebody sold the paper, this photo? Uh, well, is it a real photo? Is it a doctored photo? Is this something that is looking to try and blackmail somebody? Is this, it really depends upon, how you want this to move the story. This is a great set piece to begin, how the chess game unveils. How do the players react? How do the NPCs react? To what is going on. What is the player's hand in the photos? Did they take it? Were they looking to try and get one over on a rival, or is a rival trying to get one over on, the players group. And I
Maybe
know in go ahead.
I was just gonna say maybe it's your mob that has given the incriminating photos to Outback Alice. What happens if those it gets revealed to the individuals in there that you're the ones that gave up the photos, and also how did you get them?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've got great ability at being sly and being able to notice things. So like, you know, w- in a lot of our Zoo Mafia games, we have done, the evil rule of, don't split the party. We've split the party a lot. In fact, in most of the games, it happened all the time, and it was fabulous. Um, and in a game like Zoomafia, it's pretty easy. So at one point in time, like you could easily say, okay, look out and, safecracker or somebody who's got, uh, good awareness and good stealth, sly, go off and find, track this person and wait for just the amount of time. I think your character Flick, who was a private investigator, would have been very easy to go and do these things because he's already got the background at being able to do all these things. So sure, you wait for the right moment and boom, now you've got either something that you can sell to the papers, or send a copy to the person and blackmail them. You can have a lot of fun with it. The level of criminality that we've explored and left unexplored is crazy. There's still so much more that we can do with Zoo Mafia games.
So let us look at another direction. A flood forces predator and prey gangs into the same shelter. What does that mean? How does that happen? Like, that's very conceivable. If the zoo is flooded and there is one particular area that is the high ground and also possibly shelter there, that is going to drive all the citizens of the zoo to that one specific place. Um, and they could have gotten there one of two ways. One is they go on their own volition and get there. It happens when the zoo shut down. Or the other is the zookeepers round up all the animals and take them all to the same place and secure them, right? And I kind of like this idea a little better. Um, and then once everything's secured and everything's good to go, they're like, all right, we're done here. We have to deal with other problems and maybe our own lives and other parts of the zoo or other parts of the city, and they leave the animals thinking they're secure and everything will be fine. Problem is, these aren't normal animals. These are zoo mafia animals. And now you've thrown a bunch of different mobsters together, plus all the civilians, and also they can get out of their cages.
Yeah, it's a dangerous situation to really be put in, because it's like, all right, well, how are you going to respond if you're all clustered? And normally in Zoo Mafia, it's like, okay, you've got the ability to get out of your enclosure, you've got the ability to go where you want. But what if there's literally nowhere else to go because the storm outside is raging that bad, because you've got that much of a problem? It could be like, okay, how do you deal with this? What do you do next? So like, do you enter into negotiations, or do you go into like full on brawl mode, with everybody all in view, so everyone's gonna know what happened, how it started.
Well, yeah, because you're not only you're gonna have the civilians and the mob bosses and the mafias themselves, right? You're also going to have the flat paws there. You might have some claw patrol there, the feds as well, and you're all just thrown together. And one, if you go brawl mode, the problem with that is there's a good chance then the humans are going to figure something out that you don't want them to figure out. That's problematic. Two, you go brawl mode and you murder a bunch of the citizens. Well, generally to do crime, you have to have people to do the crime too. You need victims of those crimes. Well, if you murder them all, you're not going to be able to do your crime, and crime definitely doesn't pay. If you don't have anyone to sell your stuff to. So So these are things that are going to happen. So I think the fun scenario is an uneasy truce, but you can kind of use it as a way to delve into the different characters that maybe the players wouldn't normally get to interact with because they're lowly peons, but because they're all thrown together in this one scenario, then there's not a whole lot of choice, and maybe they step up as the ones to try and like hold the peace and keep the calm.
Absolutely. And I think a truce would be a scenario that would be tenuous, and you could really like dial up the tension and just kind of see, all right, how does this person react and how does that person react? And maybe you try and like push your players of like, okay, well, you can see the tension on, let's say Big Rene, the rhinoceros that, is this person's, enforcer. And you can see her nostrils flaring as she looks over and, is kind of like silently judging, like without words. Can you try and egg your players on into action, as you move from, person to person? I think it could be a lot of fun.
Well, also, what if you have these like tense but intimate encounters with these other criminals, and because of the circumstances, you wouldn't necessarily be together like this. You wouldn't lower your defenses, but because you don't really have a choice, it just kind of comes out, and the humanity kind of comes out of everybody, right? And you share a couple of actual moments. What happens when you meet them again on the streets? Like they're just not Al Capone's enforcer anymore. They're like a person that you've interacted with, you talked with, maybe you shared a moment with, right? Like, how does that how is that going to affect your character? I just think it would be a really fun session for role playing and exploration of all the different characters that you have populated in your zoo.
So the power's out, the humans are coming, and you've got three crates. The power's out, the humans are coming, and you've got three crates of contraband. What's your mob's next move?
Very good question. Speaking of questions, if you have any, now's a great time to ask them. Um, it's not a whole lot going on in the chat. We've got Allure here coming in from Iceland. Awesome. Hear from you. He says, when I hear very big whales, I think about the worms in Dune. The whales spout ether. They might just spout ether and other things, but they are quite large. They can, I imagine the babies being like the size of orcas, and the older and larger ones, the size of the largest of ships, maybe even bigger. Seraph Sands. I'm late. Was going to mention Magic the Gathering and the Eldrazi in
Eldrazi, yeah.
Eldrazi in that franchise. I don't know about that stuff. That's Magic the Gathering.
I'm a little out of touch with it, but I at least know the term Eldrazi. It's been a long time since I've been a card flopper, but I've sunk way more money than I'm proud to admit.
And also the idea of the world ending, ordering for it to be reborn. And I mean, two of the three campaign settings we've discussed is really all about that. And the games we're playing in them now is in that afterbirth, I guess you could say, after it has been reborn. I also love doing things that alter the game and the campaign and the world that we're playing in meaningful ways. We've definitely done that over the years, and because me and Ted have shared quite a few campaigns in the same world, like when we do that, it like affects everybody in the other games as well. So it kind of becomes this like shared moment between different groups, which has been kind of cool in my experience. So with that, if there are no questions, we're going to head on out, but we will be back. So do not fear.
So thanks for riding out these narrative disasters with us. May your campaigns be cataclysmically epic.
If this rocked your world, hit the like. If this rocked your world, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And next week, we'll explore what makes a hero. The link to that chat is already in the description, so you go check it out and sign up to be notified for next week. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.